both 6th platoon. I've got some really good friends in 6th platoon and 4th platoon. We're both having it really, really hard, really, really bad. Yeah. You know, we weren't the only ones that were coming up against enemy positions or enemy soldiers that, you know, were resolute, to say the least, in their defence of London.
And this is something I think has been a little bit mischaracterised over the years. Is there has been in some instances, people have said, oh, you know, the Argentine conscripts, they didn't put up any resistance. So, you know, which, you know, I've read other accounts, and obviously you're saying now that certainly wasn't the case in certain instances.
That's why my company lost nearly 67% casualties, because no one put up a fight.
It's crazy.
I do love it when people say that. So how come my company was down to about 30 blokes then?
It doesn't make any sense. Well, as you say, purely looking at the figures, but also just as you say from other people's account, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that's sort of become I think it's because of potentially the characterization of demoralized conscripts, and therefore people just assume, or some people have taken that as, you know, as the, you know, a description of their fighting ability, which obviously it wasn't, certainly not in all instances. So
I think the best way I've always summed it up for myself is they were as patriotic and as keen on their cause as we were on ours. Yeah, they firmly believed that they were fighting for the right thing, and so do we.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the way I've always sort of rationalised it for myself. The young guy, they didn't run off. I'm sure some did, but a lot of them didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So a tough fight, obviously.
Well, it took us at least 12. It took us nearly 18 hours to take the mountain, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's a long old battle. I know there's been longer battles since in places like Afghanistan, etc. 18 hours at night, you know, up that mountain. It was still quite hard, quite a feat to achieve, but also quite a difficult thing to do.
Yes, and I'm assuming most people watching this are at least somewhat familiar with the Battle of Mount Longdon. But obviously, to point out, it was a night attack as well, which is.
Oh yeah, it was night. No night viewing aids.
No,
we didn't have PNGs. PNGs were around, but they weren't issued to us. The Argentinians had them, but we certainly didn't. No, so it was just a case of, you know, everyone being a link man, shouting everything down, etc.
Yes, yeah, and sort of firing at muzzle flashes and so forth when you saw them.
Absolutely, yeah. And hoping they were the enemies.
Yes, yes. In the confusion, which you've,
a little bit chaotic.
And well, the confusion and the chaos you've already sort of described there. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's lots of I mean, I don't know how long you've got. There's lots of things that people who, unless they read James O'Connell's book, there's a lot of things that people don't realise, like about Sergeant Mackay's attack, about the casualties, the aid post, the casualty evacuation, you know, and just how bad the actual battle was. It was an extremely brutal battle.
I would be very interested to hear, and I've certainly got time to listen, so please.
It really was. I mean, Ian Mackay's assault went forward, a recce patrol, or what was supposed to be a recce patrol, turned into an attack with Corporal Bailey, as I said, my section commander, who received the MM for his actions. Sergeant Mackay received the Victoria Cross. And again, it's written down in places. Corporal John Lewis, just reached out in the dark and grabbed the first hand that was next to him. And it just happened to be me, because by this time, 4 and 5 platoon had actually joined up to make a unit. Because the 4 platoon were also separated from, couldn't establish it as one unit. We joined up together to make one bigger unit. So Corporal John Lewis was actually 4 platoon. He grabbed me. We went round with another gentleman who's now a Colonel, Sully Aladji. And we went round and we found Corporal Bailey. Corporal Lewis, or John Lewis, told Sully Aladji to treat Corporal Bailey. So Sully stayed with him and treated him. He'd been shot 3 times, once in the hand, once in the hip, and once in the neck. So Sully did a great job there. Corporal Lewis then not dragged me, but then took me with him, and we found Sergeant Mackay on the position. Corporal Lewis confirmed he was dead. Now, Sergeant Mackay was actually my platoon sergeant in depot. He was the guy who passed me out the depot.
So strong feelings at that point.
Oh yeah, I felt awful. I couldn't believe the guy was dead, to be honest. Yeah. He was such a good guy in the depot. He really was. So Court Lewis confirmed that the Argentines then seen me in Court Lewis, and they started to engage us. So we moved back round. We picked up Sully Aladji and picked up Court Bailey, and it was then that the order came from company headquarters via the awesome Sergeant Major Johnny Weeks. I'm sure you've heard that name before. He said, right, get the casualties together. And Court McLaughlin was also there. Court McLaughlin was giving orders all night. You know, I'm sure you've heard that name before. Giving orders all night, leading assaults, doing everything. You know, I mean, literally everything for our sort of our group of guys. Some people were closer to him than I was, but I was forever hearing his voice, keeping people going forward. Just don't want to lose the momentum. But then there was a lull in the battle where we were allowed to get our casualties back. And that's when we realised, myself and my sort of small group of younger soldiers realised how bad it had gone for us, because we'd actually lost 3 of our friends. One had been killed I believe, in one of the initial bursts, Private Burt. Private Scrivens had been treating another Private Gross. And while he was treating him, he got shot. One of the other 17, might have turned 18 by then, Mark Harles Thomas was there. He's seen all this. We went out, and I ended up next to, or near Mark Harles Thomas, on a stretcher with him, trying to get Neil back to the regimental aid post. Neil had been hit in the chest, was in an awful lot of pain, an awful lot of trouble. We were all trying to reassure him. Obviously, he wasn't the only casualty, but it was a casualty that I dealt with. We got him back to the regimental aid post, where Court Phil Probert was under an awful lot of pressure, because the casualties was. Nobody realised, I don't think, how many there actually were until we started getting them back.
And concentrating them in one place, yeah.
And it was concentrated in one place. And Neil was in an awful lot of pain. So Mark didn't want to leave him. I didn't want to leave him. So I stood at his feet while Mark sort of comforted him at his head and spoke to him. And that's where the young lad died, unfortunately. It was his 18th birthday. Yeah, really harrowing.
Sobering
that
stuff.
That has affected me ever since. I won't lie. Yeah, it has. That was the worst thing of the night. Yeah. After that, we regrouped, reorganised, and the company commander decided we were just going to make one more push along what's commonly known now as the sheep track, and that's where we moved down. Whatever was left of the company, basically, it was just a mixture of everybody. There was people from other companies as well, from support company and from the signals platoon, etc. It was just whatever it was. It's a gang of guys, and we're just going to keep going forward. And that's when we got, for want of a better phrase, an ambush front, where 2 guys just ran out, fired automatic bursts of what I'm assuming would be FN 7.62 straight down the line. They hit loads of people, including killing one guy, and that was John Crow. Killed him instantly. We got back from that position, or back from that location. Cuttle McLaughlin fired a 66, which allowed people to move. He knelt up, fired a 66, straight into a bunker, which is a feat in itself to hit anything with a 66. We fired it into the bunker. And we then started to evacuate those casualties back into what is called what's known now on the mountain as the first bowl. And that's where B Company sort of regrouped what was left. There was about 25, 30 of us, something like that. You know, I'm not entirely accurate with the figures. And we were in the bowl there, sort of trying to administrate ourselves, redistribute ammunition, do the classic British soldier thing, get a brew on. While we were told that A Company would then push through and take the remaining sort of kilometre or the kilometres. It's a very long feature. It's about 3 or 4 kilometres long. And A Company pushed through us, actually taking our ammunition off us, because B Company were just basically, you know, and I do remember one very, very good friend of mine called Ned Cameron came through, and he was told to get the ammunition from B Company. And he just said to Sergeant Major Weeks, "Where's the rest of the company?" He said, "Court Cameron, this is it," or something along those lines. And Ned Cameron, like I say, very, very good friend of mine, he sort of went, right, okay, looked a little bit shocked himself, to be honest. He looked really shocked that this was what was left. Yeah, it was, and that was B Company's sort of role, not finished, but that was where we were taken over from A Company. They took over from us because we were basically not a spent force by any stretch of the imagination, but we were, you know, we took a hammering, to be honest.
And at very least needed time to, as you say, get admin in order and everything else. Yeah.
And reorganise ourselves. We had private soldiers promoted in the field from private to lance corporal to become section commanders. We only had one NCO left. And that was Colin Edwards. And I nearly done him with the 84, bless him. But it's I know how silly. But he was the only NCO left. Yeah, all the others have been either killed or injured.
Very, very sobering stuff. Very, very sobering stuff.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Sad times, proud times, but sad as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you for recounting that. Of obviously perhaps a difficult thing to run over again.
Really did hit me hard. Yeah, it really did. I'm not going to lie, it did. Still does now. We tried all we could. We really did. We tried everything. We Mark, myself, and other people there as well. So Steve Jelf was only 17. I was only 17. I think Mark was still under 18. I'm sure he'll correct me on that. Even he was under 18. It was everyone getting on the stretcher.